I think we need to have a talk about this because, I think there can sometimes be some, people who might be insensitive to race, that might not think that it doesn't matter, and it does. I had Amaj Toure
Yeah.
yesterday on the Jimmy Dore show. Black Guns Matter. He's a black libertarian, and we talked about certain things. We talked about white supremacy. We talked about what it really means. That there's a lot of meaning to that. And I've always said that when you're running a campaign, it's really difficult. It's hard if you're going to lean on the white supremacy mentality. Obviously, when you look at what's going on in Africa, where you have a white colony, a Macron saying that they're not going to let this stand in Africa, a predominantly black country, that can be looked upon as white supremacy. But the way it gets conflicted sometimes, I think, is that to say that all white people have some form of supremacy is misleading. A lot of the supremacists might be white, but not all white people are supremacists. And most white people, especially in the States, don't have power. They're very poor and whatnot. So I always ask, what is our responsibility? How do we approach this? How do we look at things? I still think, and I'm going to stand by what I'm saying, when you have groups like the Squad, when you have groups like Bernie Sanders, what Cornel West is kind of matriculated into with the Green Party, they overplay that race card. They use it, they weaponize it. So they try to silence people. Let's talk about this right now because this kind of spun out of control. Vivek, who's been Vivek Ramaswamy, who we understand we've talked about since out of the gate, since he's announced his presidency, and I reached out to him the day after. He never responded back. Is an anti-China war hawk. At the end of the day, he'll go into Mexico, a sovereign nation, illegally in my mind. There are issues. I am not crazy about Vivek, but Vivek has been able to rise in the polls. He's been able to kind of make himself the target. He was the target on that debate stage, fam. Since Donald Trump wasn't there, they went after the next guy. The second guy is in second place. And in some polls, Vivek has moved ahead of Ron DeSantis. Why? Because of his open dialogue and the things he has to say. So let's take a listen. And fam, I'd love to hear your opinion about this. We should talk about this because I think at the end of the day, what the Squad try to do with this whole situation, the way they try to manipulate it and take advantage of it, needs to be called out. But then again, I could be wrong, and maybe you'll put me in my place. Let's listen.
Ayanna Pressley, she's in the Congress today. She's a member of the Squad. Her words, not mine. We don't want any more black faces that don't want to be a black voice. We don't want any more brown faces that don't want to be a brown voice. Literally word for word. I'm not putting words in anybody's mouth. Ibram Kendi wrote the book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. I wrote Woke Inc. It was a pretty successful book. His sold more copies than mine. Here's what it says. Opening lines. The remedy to past discrimination is present discrimination. The remedy to present discrimination is future discrimination. So the other side will gaslight you when you say this stuff. It's like, oh, you're just making that critical race theory stuff up. No. These aren't my words. These are the words of the modern grand wizards of the modern KKK. Really. Ayanna Pressley, she's in the Congress today.
All right. So, fam, let me just say this much, too, as well, because I remember a time we went to Echo Park for when there was back opening. Remember, they had the whole shutdown. They cleared the park. Mm-hmm. They had all these homeless people living in for quite some time during the COVID situation. Even though they formed a community bond together, had a soup kitchen, and they were doing, I think, amazing things and kind of laying out a groundwork for what could be done in the future for maybe homeless people and how they can come together. It was a pretty amazing scene. However, they unjustly cleared out the park and they fenced it up, and they did their cleanup job. And when they were ready to reopen it, we went to that park. There were activists, homeless people that were living there before that were thrown out of that park, were there to speak. And one of the friends of ours, Phoenix, who was with a group speaking, was at one point cut off from speaking. He was kind of challenging a guy who was running for governor. His name was Kevin. They call me Kevin. He was a real estate Bitcoin guy, and he was trying to speak. Phoenix jumped up to give him some words, and I'll never forget what I saw. People within Phoenix group, 2 white guys, started yelling at the other dude speaking for Phoenix. And I told those guys, I said, that's one of the most racist things you can do when you feel that you have the need to speak for a man of color who's ready to speak for himself. Okay? And I think that what I witnessed with working with you guys, right, when I'm working with you and Jonny, is that how you guys shunned aside when you didn't go along with the progressive narrative. They were like, how dare you speak out of term? That was the racism that I witnessed. What Vivek was pointing out over here, what Ayanna said, I think was on point. how can she say that just because you're born a certain way or you've been, you're a certain color, that you have to think a certain way, that you can't have your own opinions for yourself, right? That you're speaking out of turn. What are your thoughts on what Vivek said there? And then we'll get to the Dana Bash, how we went back and forth, and eventually Jabal Bauman and Ayanna Pressley.
Yeah, so I sort of disagree with you, and I sort of agree with you. So I think the situation that we witnessed in Echo Park, 100%, I agree with you. Like, in the way, these progressives, especially the white progressives, when you go out of turn, if you're a Black or Latino person and you don't support the Democratic Party or you don't support what they support, they turn around and act like some of the most vile and more racist people, saying, how dare you walk out of place, talk out of place. And that's 100% true. But I think where Vivek was faulty was comparing Ayanna Pressley to the KKK. Because Ayanna Pressley, for all her faults, I have a hard time thinking that's the same thing that she's doing. I don't like her. I don't like the squad. But I think it's just a really bad example because she is Black and she's experienced whatever she has experienced. And I think it's just going to put off too many people when you use that comparison. He could have just said she's being hypocritical here and saying, and telling people of color what they should or shouldn't think. And if they don't think what she thinks, then she's saying they should be outcast. And Vivek, of course, is also a person of color. He's an Indian, I believe, Indian American. So I'm not saying he's, being some sort of racist necessarily, but I think he's being tone deaf with his comparison, because I think his comparison is going to fall on deaf ears because all people are going to hear is the KKK reference. Just like when people come in saying that X person is they're a white supremacist without really talking about the underlying context. I think all people are going to hear is white supremacist, and it's going to put people off. So if you're going to criticize people for using the white supremacy card all the time, you can't go around and turn around and use the KKK card and saying, this Black woman is being the epitome of KKK. And also that's where the whole woke thing comes in, because as much as I agree that there's this level of wokeism in what has been defined by the right as wokeism, because there's different meanings. Woke used to mean something else to people who were more progressive and whatever. It used to mean something different. It came from the Black community. It used to mean smart. It used to actually have a meaning. Now what it's turned to has been defined as AOC, and paying attention to pronouns over content, paying attention to the social justice issues without having any justice in them or economic backing at all. So all of that is getting lost in this whole culture war situation, which is why I don't even like using the term woke, because I think it's only one perspective of what it means. And I also think sometimes when we try to throw away, as you said earlier, we try to say that race isn't a thing at all. It's kind of like the pendulum has swung the other way, that race isn't a thing at all, that sexism isn't a thing at all. And so it's almost like it's all or nothing. And I think in a lot of these independent spaces where people are criticizing wokeism and we're criticizing, the identity politics that the liberal left has just manipulated, we also have to remember that these things do exist. They're just being manipulated and weaponized. And I just think Vivek fell short. In my opinion, I don't think that was a winning argument. I think it was really stupid. And I think they're both being really dumb by saying the things they're saying. And I think he is part of the problem. I think Vivek is a con man. He's a great con man. He did, he did a lot of like really terrible big pharma representing. So if you care about big pharma, and if you care about the pharmaceutical industry and what that's done to people, supporting Vivek would be extremely hypocritical. 100%. He is a China hawk. So to me, it's more dangerous to be a China hawk because China is the bigger power here. Behind Russia, it's China. And whether, it's Joe Biden and the war against Russia, tomorrow it'll be a Republican in the war against China. And I think Vivek is using the popularity of standing against Ukraine because you're standing against the Democrats to his own, to garner votes. But is he genuine? Is he going to be different? No, he's a WEF guy. He's whole right in line with everything. So I take everything he says with a grain of salt. I think he's a really huge con man, and I think he's a neocon.
You know, I think a lot of the talk right now and the messaging and the questions are coming around that what is more important to lead with, right? As we're talking about the left right now, and we're talking about mainly Cornel West and where he is going. Is it more important, fam, in your mind, that we need to point out the oppression of Black and brown people in this country, or is it more important to coalesce around class solidarity and work our way backwards? You know what I'm saying? I think that there's a movement that when you do put the oppression of Black and the xenophobia that does occur with the United States, you're kind of concentrating on the people itself, right? The actual neighbors. How do we act with each other? Can we really make a change? If white people today can make a change and they were less racist, if they, you know, were to change their ideology, what they thought about foreigners coming in, is that really going to change the way we do with anything in society? I don't think so, because it's the class issue that's so much important, because the class issue highlight the oligarchs controlling the rest of us, and it is a unity we have together. You know, I think one of the biggest missed opportunity coming out of the whole COVID mentality is for some people who got it wrong to not go back and say, let's get it right. Because at the end of the day, I think a lot of white people in the country were the most trustworthy of their doctor, right? If you look at all the classes of people, when it came to Latin people, Black people, you know, Asian people, they have more of a distrust within the pharma system than white Americans. White people just listen to their doctors and they go along with it. Well, I think a lot of white people realize that their lives weren't cared about, because Whitey had to go when it came to COVID, as much as people of color and Black and brown and Asian people, where that could have been the unity, the cry together to say, look, we're all on the chopping block here. Now you see this, your privileges are given by somebody, you know what I'm saying? Rather than concentrate on the people who are getting the privileges, why won't we concentrate on the people who are giving the privileges? You know, I think we just need to be more strategic about it at the end of the day. And yes, you know, I did make the statement that I think a lot of people are turned off immediately when they hear that white supremacy, because they think, despite what they're going through and the suffering that they're going through, because, you know, there's a lot of poor white people in this country that can't pay their bills, don't have a car, can't send their kids to school, don't have medical care, you know what I'm saying? Like that, that's an area where we can all come together and coalesce. So I just think there's been a weaponization from the fraud squad more than anything. I wasn't crazy about his comments and saying the KKK, because you're right, it is going to fall on deaf ears the way it falls on deaf ears the other way. So it wasn't the bad messaging, but I don't think it was something out. And you'll see, because we should get to the Dana Bash clip. You know, watch how the mainstream media has to defend this point, this position, and how Vivek pushes back. And then we'll go into Jamal Bauman and what he says, the way because this Jamal Bauman will never miss an opportunity to scream racism at somebody, and then kind of, you know, do what he did, fundraise off it, which we'll get to as well. And at the end of the day, fam, you did point out that Vivek is brown, that he, you know, it's different than a white guy saying what he'd said as opposed to what he said. No, I mean, doesn't that carry a lot of weight, the fact that he is brown?
Yeah, he's brown, but he's also, you know, like, I mean, there's a lot of underlying ethnic differences that have been going on as well, you know, with India. There is also that underlying like cultural aspect to it as well. So there is a lot of racism in India as well, like within the different where, you know, so there's a lot of it. That's why you get into these sort of things. I think it's really unwise to use what he said and also what they said. So let's go ahead and take a look at this video.
You took issue with comments from Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. She reportedly said, quote, "We don't need any more brown faces that don't want to be a brown voice. About that, you said, "These are the words of the modern grand wizards of the modern KKK." You know, I'm sure the KKK was responsible for more than a century's worth of horrific lynchings, rapes, murders of Black people. How in any way are the views you're talking about comparable to the views and atrocities committed by the KKK?
What I said is the Grand Wizards of the KKK would be proud of what they would hear her say, because there's nothing more racist than saying that your skin color predicts something about the content of your viewpoints.
You didn't just say they would be proud. You said these are the words of the modern Grand Wizards of the modern KKK?
It is the same spirit. You're right about that, Dana. I think it is the same spirit to say that I can look at you and based on just your skin color, that I know something about the content of your character, that I know something about the content of the viewpoints you're allowed to express. For Ayanna Pressley to tell me that because of my skin color, I can't express my views, that is wrong. It is divisive. It is driving hate in this country. This is dividing our country to a breaking point.
That is a debate that is based on nonviolent discussion. That you just said you're using rhetoric, which she said she's using rhetoric. That's one thing. And another thing is to say that she represents and she is a modern version of a KKK, which, as you know, was dedicated to the subjugation and violence against Black people. How on earth is she a modern Grand Wizard
let's be intellectually
of that
honest.
kind of organization?
Let's be intellectually honest and get to the heart of what this debate ought to be about. There is a worldview that says that the remedy to past discrimination is present discrimination, that if you're Black or brown, you have to have a particular point of view. That's from Ibram Kendi. That's from Ayanna Pressley, the people I quoted in my speech yesterday.
But can
There's
you
a
have
different
an
view
intellectually
that I have, which
honest
says that regardless
conversation
of who you are,
when you accuse
have to be
her
able to
of
have your
being
own
a
opinion.
Grand Wizard
Let's
of
have
the
the debate.
KKK? Can you have that
I think that
intellectually
the
honest
point is-
discussion with that kind of rhetoric?
Yes, I can, Dana, because the point I'm highlighting is that even the people who, in good spirit, we all agree that the KKK was an awful organization that is a toxic stain in our national history. So given that we can start from that point of agreement, now that allows us to say, well, who actually sounds more like that organization today? The people who are calling for more racial discrimination on the basis of skin color. So yes, I think that is an
But it's not
intellectually
about
useful starting point
sounding
for a
like
provocative discussion that we need to have in this
the
country.
whole point is
And I
the
think that- I
KKK
think the reality,
wasn't
Dana,
just
is
about rhetoric.
we have to speak
They
openly. in this
lynched
country.
people, they murdered people, they raped people, they burned their homes.
And that was wrong.
Simply
That was obviously
because
wrong.
so
Wrong.
okay, so
again, that is obviously a wrong
if
thing
you want to
for
have
them
an
to have done.
intellectual
Absolutely.
discussion, do you think that maybe comparing her to the Grand Wizard and the notion of what she said to being a modern leader of the KKK was maybe a step too far, or you stand by what you said?
I stand by what I said to provoke an open and honest discussion in this country.
So, fam, I mean, there is a lot of, parallels. Once again, like you're a brown person, you're a Latino person, you have to think this way, right? Like we've witnessed this before.
Yeah.
Like with you and Johnny, like how dare you get out of line and have a brain and speak for yourself? That's not along the lines of the progressive Latino woman out there. You're wrong. You know what I'm saying? And I didn't see that at first, and then I saw it when I was with you guys. I was like, holy shit, like. They're getting mad for Fiorella for having an opinion that's not in their group's point of view. So, I mean, he kind of hits that, but,
No, he's right. He's right about his initial point, like that they are being like, them telling, her saying, I don't want a brown person, any more brown faces that basically don't agree with me is extremely divisive. He said the word divisive is extremely arrogant. And if it was... Again, I can't really say it's racist, though, because it's not, again, it's more opportunistic because it's coming from Ayanna Pressley. She's not being racist. She's being divisive and she's using political manipulation. She's using race to politically manipulate her message. But so is he, because he's saying in this way, this is a great way to push a conversation, because unfortunately, Dana was right. You're comparing rhetoric to what people are going to hear is KKK Grand Wizard. You're comparing, her to a KKK Grand Wizard. These people lynch Black people. So I stand by the fact that it was a terrible comparison for him to use. And I was laughing because it just gets us into these circular arguments of like, but this and that. And like, are we actually talking about substance? Are we talking about economics? Are we talking about anything that's remotely important for the American people? No, we're just talking about, he said, she said, and this race thing and that race thing between two people of color. It's just absolutely ridiculous to me. I think it's a waste of time, but I think, of course, it gets the clicks and it gets the views. So both CNN, Vivek, and the squad are all just using this for this, and the right uses it too, Fox News uses it too. So again, like, it's just not genuine. It's just not, if you want to have a real conversation, he wouldn't have called her this KKK Grand Wizard or used that whole scenario. And she wouldn't start off by dismissing anything he has to say because he's not believing in the thing that brown people should believe in. Right. So it's just, again, they're both wrong. And I just hate this.
I mean,
BS
Vivek was
type of
responding
circular
to
discussion.
her saying that we don't need black voices, black faces that aren't going to, you know what I'm saying? That
could
to
have
me
responded
is
in a
like,
better way.
wow. It's like, dude, please, like that.
Yeah,
that
she's
is saying
wrong.
you need to think a certain way. You need to act a certain way
Yeah.
because you're black or brown. And who's that to decide? Because like I said, there are many black people in this country who disagree with each other. They don't think the same way, and let's just get to the next clip real quick because it is our good friend Jamal Bauman who never let an opportunity to fundraise get away from you, fam. If you can scream and act like a fool and be all dramatic, and you know what I'm saying, this is the official statement. But Jose Vega said, and we're gonna there. Jamal Bauman supports neo-Nazis. That's a 100% fact. Now listen to what he has to say, fam.
Keep black women's name out of your mouth. First of all, that's number one. Number two, keep black people name out of your mouth. And instead of spewing hateful, disgusting, ignorant, dumbass rhetoric, how about you pay homage to the black people in this country that have fought and died for the freedoms you exercise today? How about you pay homage to the black people historically that have continued to save the soul of America and move America forward? How about that? Instead of fitting in nicely into the pocket of the white supremacists that you are, having the nerve to spew hateful, disgusting, racist rhetoric. Keep a black woman's name out your mouth. Keep black people's name out your mouth. Learn your history. Have some respect so that maybe you'll be taken seriously one day.
Dude is like one of the most divisive people in Congress that there is, really, to tell you the truth. I can't stand this dude. I hate this dude. This dude is funding neo-Nazis. He acts like he doesn't know what's going on. And when you ask him, well, why are you doing it? Because of Putin. Because of Putin. You need to learn your history, Mr. Bauman. You know what I'm saying? You warmongering piece of dumb. But go ahead, fam. I'm sorry.
I mean, it's just I can't take anything he has to say seriously when he's backing the Democratic Party, when he backs apartheid Israel. He's one of AIPAC's biggest fans. When he okays to fund money for Nazis in Ukraine, as Jose pointed out. When, he's again, they're all manipulating this, but he is manipulating this to the nth degree now because he's making Vivek a white supremacist. I don't like Vivek. I just told you all the reasons why I think he's a con man and a neocon, but he's not a white supremacist. And so he's almost like completely dismissing Vivek's identity in an effort to make him a white supremacist, which you can't pick and choose. If you're going to pay attention to identity, he's Indian, so he's brown. So I mean, and like, so it's just kind of like it's ridiculous here. So I can't take anything seriously this guy says because he's currently backing one of the most racist, hegemonic empires in the entire world. He talks about these freedoms that we don't really have in the US. And again, he's not talking about economics. He's not talking about imperialism. He's not talking about foreign policy because he sucks on all of those. And he supports the most racist foreign policy, which is to bomb and destroy countries in the global south full of black and brown people. So then he can come home and say, hey, I support freedom and democracy and I'm against white supremacy. Again, if anything, he is supporting more policies of genocide and racism than a lot of people because he is a part of this democratic contingent. So I just think it's, I just think it's the utmost hypocrisy. I don't agree with anything any of these people have said, but he's just he's milking it, he's milking it for all it's worth there.
He always does. He just like he tries to milk the whole Second Amendment situation, screaming about Republicans don't care about their kids getting killed. And then he signs a bill that goes and funds Nazis with weapons. I guess the children being killed in the Donbass don't mean anything to you. And it's one of many different bad choices by this guy. He's awful. Show the fundraiser really quickly. Let's take a look. Have Anya's back against racist attack. Right?
Ayana, yeah.
Ayana, and then you can scroll through it real quick. Cheese slice. We'll show. And it says, here's her statement. One of my childhood, you're going to see one of my childhood memories that is deeply embedded in that my own ancestors and living family members have been brutalized, lynched, raped by the KKK. I recall when my family member had moved into a predominantly white cul-de-sac in the 80s when I was a child, and we had a cross burned in our lawn. So for me, go ahead, buddy. So for me, it is deeply shameful and offensive and dangerous as the candidate who compared me to the KKK wizard's words are. He is not occupying any real estate in my head. He must be, because you're writing about it. I remain squarely focused on the work of undoing centuries of harm that has precisely been done to Black Americans and charting a path of truth, restorative justice, and racial justice forward. And if you can just move, and it says right down below, Black candidates need our support more than ever. This is because this is the BS we deal with every single day, fam. Oh my God, us Black candidates have all this money, that have these houses and this luxury life, that we live in a different class, the 1%. This is what we deal with every day. Can you chip in 10, 25, or 50 to help us smash our record in 1 hour? Yeah.
You know what pisses me off the most from this is that I think this incites more racism and more hatred for more Black and brown people, because these people are weaponizing their identities without doing anything for Black and brown people. And they're doing it because guess what? They're getting paid good money by people who are controlling them. And I have to be careful about how I say this, but this is exactly what it is. They're completely, and I said this about Kamala Harris a long time ago. They're completely corporatized. They are bought by the corporate sector, and they are completely akin to them. This doesn't mean that I am justifying what happened with the KKK or that in any way I support it. What I am pissed off is that these people weaponize their identities. AOC and all the fraud squad, all of them have weaponized their identities to try to portray themselves as fighters of social justice, of a progressive contingent, of fighters against, the establishment. They are literally getting paid by the establishment. They are part and par with the establishment. And they are causing more people to dismiss the fact that these things do exist, because they're so angry when they see them lie like this, when they see them profit off a PR stunt that's been created to raise money. And again, so Vivek's going to make raise some money, and so are they. So again, this is exactly why I don't play these games with this whole, back and forth, because they're both going to raise money. CNN and Fox News are going to make money from the ratings of this. And we just talked about it for like 30 minutes. So this is just I'm just so fed up with his bullshit, because it's just so, it completely makes us go nowhere. We stop progressing when we sit and get involved in this circular, hamster wheel here.
They've been playing the victim for quite some time, and look what they're doing. They're asking for your contribution could be split evenly between Jamal Bauman and Ayanna Pressley. They're literally fundraising off this 25, 100, 250. If you really cared about Black people, why aren't you speaking up for what's going on in West Africa right now? Not a goddamn word. Not a goddamn word about it, right? You haven't said a goddamn word about it, and now you want to sit there and you want to,
what's going on in all these places, the water in Flint, Michigan, still the water in Jackson, Mississippi. I could go on. They only matter when it's time to fundraise. Black people, for these people, and for anybody, whether it's AOC and all of these identity, whether it's gay rights, whatever identity they choose. I'm not saying that, real people who are working people haven't undergone these struggles. I'm saying these people are weaponizing these struggles of these people to fundraise off of poor people. So you give them your money as a poor person, thinking they're going to do something. They haven't done crap. Please show me what they've done for the working class American. They haven't done anything. And so this is exactly, this is why it's more enraging to me, then when I see somebody that I know, what's his name, that my favorite Republican, what's his name? Tom Cotton. I know who Tom Cotton is. I know where Tom Cotton stands. I think he's a POS. But these people like Ayanna Pressley and Jamal Bowman and AOC, they take money from working people. They tell people that they're anti-racist, and then they go and bomb and support legislation to bomb, kids and women and children all over the global South, all over the Middle East. And then they turn around and say they're anti-white supremacy and anti-racist and also send money to Nazis. I mean, it's just completely hypocritical. And that's why it's more enraging to me, these people, than any of the people who at least, they're honest. They don't like, immigrants. They don't like these illegals coming in. I know where they stand, but these people pretend to be on your side and they're not.
I always hear people talk about, what's the agenda for black people that these people are putting forward? Shouldn't they be leading what's the agenda for poor people? Because that's more inclusive and you can get more of a coalition that way, fam. Because, when you say the majority of poor people in this country, the majority of black people are poor, the majority of white people are poor. Doesn't that build more of a coalition, or do you think it's as a necessity to say and point out what you're going to do for the black community as opposed to what you're going to do for poor people?
I think it depends on your, at least for them, I think it depends on who their voters are and who they're targeting. If they're just like the right targets their audience with, we need to build a bigger wall, we're going to keep the cartels out. They're targeting, we're going to get more protections and more money and help you if you're black or brown. But again, they don't do any of this, which is why they're not genuine about it. And if they talk about economics, they'd have to be honest that their economics doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help black people. It doesn't help brown people. It doesn't help white people. It doesn't help anybody, because their economics is still rooted in the establishment. It's still rooted in the corporate sector. They're just cosplaying as being progressive because the entire word has been thrown out and cheapened to no end. It doesn't mean anything anymore. It just means you're a regular establishment status quo shill because Nancy Pelosi called herself a progressive. So that whole entire word is completely just thrown out.